Thanks for joining us today, Retta.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Lynn Marie.
It's Retta's birthday, I just found out. So this is an extra special treat that he's taking time out to join the Quit Happens brigade of successful strategic quitters. And
Of,
I can't thank you enough.
of course, so happy to be here and so glad to share a little bit of my experience with you.
Oh, looking forward to it. So, little background, Retta and I met in Italy at A-Fest. And prior to A-Fest, I'm pretty sure I had seen something in the A-Fest Facebook group about your quit. It was, I didn't know who you were at the time, but I remember seeing like Wall Street quit, starts own thing, successfulness ensues. And I was like, I have to meet this person in Italy. And as with all other good meets, we met on the dance floor, I believe.
Yeah, so many cool things that happened, but yeah, I thought it was important. So this is my second A-Fest, and my first one, I went into it not really knowing what to expect, and this one I wanted to go into it with sharing a little bit about myself and welcoming others into that community, which is a fantastic community. A-Fest is a group of entrepreneurs, but kind of just world leaders that just want to make an impact in a positive way on humanity. And it was the last year when I went, it was the first time I had been surrounded by a group of people that were so powerful and so inspirational to me. And this year I felt like I went back into it as one of everybody else. And so just wanted to share that positive energy. And I'm so glad that you read my post, and I'm so glad that we met on the dance floor and that we're able to share, here.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a time with Retta one-on-one at lunch, and I heard his quitting story, and he just recapped a little bit before we started chatting, and there's so much good stuff in it. With each quitting story, it tends to be like one or two things pop out, and it is very clear to me the morsels of awesomeness that are going to come out of this, so I'm very much looking forward to it. So if you could take us back to where you said your transformation started about 2 years ago.
Yeah. And so my story, there's a journey that I went through, and I think common to many other people, there was a program that was just running that I wasn't even aware of, that was driving me towards a goal that I think was set by my family or by my environment when I was a young kid. And that was a goal of success from the perception of people outside of myself. So, make sure that you're top in your class in high school, make sure that you get into a great university, make sure that you get a job that's going to be financially lucrative, that looks good from the outside, and stick to it despite what it may take to continue to keep that job. And so I was on that path, and the last goal that I had set for myself when I was, I think, a young person, probably a child, was get married and have a wonderful wedding. And so that was 2 years ago. And after achieving that goal, if you will, I kind of came back after our honeymoon and thought, okay, what's next? And that what's next was actually a really scary thing, because it looked like the same life that I had lived for the last 10 years, which was a lot of work, not much time with myself, not much time with people around me, and just putting my head down. And that vision of where I would be if I continued down that path was very scary to me. And so that's really the start of my transformation, because at that point I just started asking myself, Retta, what is it that you really want out of your life? And what is going to make you ultimately happy? And so that's where I started the process of just investigating what it was that I wanted.
How did you start off that process? Where did your investigations begin?
So the first thing that any, guy like myself, a Wall Street guy, would do is start to read books. And so I was just picking up all sorts of different books that, that were on Amazon, stuff that, just helped people guide them in terms of, what it was that they wanted. There was one book, though, in particular that came across that just, once I picked it up, I just couldn't put it down. And it was called Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. And it felt like he had written the book specifically for me. And he just page by page, I just kept going through it. And I was like, oh my God, this is my story. His story is a little bit different in terms of the exact specifics, but it spoke exactly to my soul. And, the takeaway was, at that point, I didn't realize that I was just working on this autopilot for, this program that my parents had instilled in me, and they were just looking out for my best. But I didn't realize that I was doing this for other people. And so I started to unwind, who I was and what was driving me. And then also I started to, understand that if I wanted an extraordinary life, or if I wanted, that dream that I'd always had of, the happy family, the beautiful life, without all of the stuff that, people didn't see for the job that I had, which was the work that I was doing and kind of the crazy hours that I was pulling, I would have to do something different, and something relatively drastic compared to what I had been doing to that point and what everybody else was doing. But that was 18 months ago, but that's really where I got comfortable with, okay, Retta, if you want to achieve that dream, the balance of everything in your life, to have success in all areas, not just financial and career, but personal, health, relationships, social, community, the impact that you're having on humanity, you're going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to do something different in a drastic way. And so that's when, okay, I've realized it's time to get to work.
And Retta is calling from New York, and there was a little glitch, I think, in the connection. So I want to make sure that we get the name of the full book and author out, which was Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic book.
And what did it recommend you start doing? How did it give us some steps to start your investigation and transformation?
I wouldn't say that it gave me specific steps, but it gave me the framework for what it was that I was trying to get to. Within that book, though, there's so many nuggets of information and knowledge. And, there's probably about 10 other references that were made in that book. John and Missy Butcher were also very foundational to my changes and the transformation that I went through. They have a program called Lifebook. And within Lifebook, you essentially map out all of the key areas in your life: your emotional life, your character, your health, your spiritual life, your relationship with your significant other, your relationship with your friends and family, parenting, financial wealth, career, the goals that you have from just an environment perspective, and really what your life vision is. And I spent probably about 40 hours going through and intimately and deeply thinking about each one of those chapters, and writing out a really a guidebook around what it was that I wanted to achieve in all of those areas. And it's a fantastic, binder that I have, 120 pages with photographs and quotes that inspire me, and it has really guided me to kind of where I am today. And so that was a reference that was made in the book. Throughout the book, Tony Robbins always comes up, and from a spiritual perspective and just his leadership and the power that he has, he's just such an inspirational person. And so have, been through all of his stuff that's publicly available on YouTube and podcasts. I went to one of his events here in New York called Unleash the Power, and I found that to be very powerful as well. And so, I just picked up all the nuggets of wisdom, not just that, what were highlighted in the book, but that were also secondary, and in any reference that was made, I also then investigated that book. So I, bought every single book that was also referenced in his book, and then I read all of that information, and the process just continued. And so, but I would highlight that I think that I was just curious. It was an insatiable curiosity around finding out what is next. That just led me to continuing to grow and seek information.
And this is what I knew we were going to get out of this, because a lot of people come to me, even last night, I was at an art show, and this woman, she says to me, she's like, I know I need to quit what I'm doing, but it's the what's next. That's the difficulty. She's like, do you have any suggestions for the what's next? And there really are a ton of suggestions for what's next, but people don't necessarily know where to find them. Yeah. And that's why I love to bring specific book recommendations, or specific, like you said, life book. That's an entire process. If people are like, oh, reading is a little too passive for me, I really want to be, diving in, then that's another great option for them.
Yeah, I found that to be great, because just me as an analytical person, going through and writing out exactly what I wanted in each one of those areas just made me deeply think about what it was that I wanted to do and why I was going to do it. And then it was a reference for me. And I go back and I look at it on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, and we review everything and rewrite that. And so the person that I was when I wrote it is very different than the person that I am today, but it's something that I continue. It's a living document that I think was very helpful. So I think others would find that helpful as well.
Yeah. Did you also say you got a coach somewhere in the process?
Yeah, I did. And so, one of the things, so once I got the idea, okay, I got it. I needed to do something else. I have all of these ideas and these people that, have inspired me, but then, what's the process? And from that point of inspiration to the point of actually leaving a job on Wall Street, I'd been doing it for 10 years at this point and, was pretty senior, I'd say, and had advised on billions of dollars of deals. And at that point, to leave that career, it's very difficult. There's, that fear of what's next. And, I think the questions that kept coming up in my mind were, what are people going to say? What happens if I fail? What am I going to do about money? And, just addressing each one of those questions head on. A coach was tremendous in helping me through to that fear that I think everybody faces as they take a change and embrace a challenge that's new to them. And so, I'd highly recommend that, just having somebody to talk through each of the challenges that you face each week as you progress towards your end goal, and having that consistent rhythm of somebody that can give you feedback in an honest way was fantastic. And maybe to address those couple questions, I think, what will people think? To me, that was an issue that held me back from making that transition. And I think that's largely based on the ego, the person that was doing it for that job, that career for outside perception. And the first step in making that transition is to let your ego go and doing the work on yourself to get the confidence and success in yourself as a human, not as a investment banker or whatever career you're in, but just as a person. And making that transition becomes much easier. On the money side of things, that was a big issue for me. And it's funny now that I think back to that. But if you actually investigate where you're spending your money and look through that in detail, there are a lot of expenses that you can cut out. And for me, I was so surprised at how much money I was spending on going to restaurants and spending money on alcohol and drinking. And, that's, I think, just systemic to Wall Street and the way that, that culture operates. But when I decided not to subscribe to that and say, okay, I'm going to create my own life, and I'm going to focus on health, wellness, and kind of achieving my dreams. Those are things that were easy to pull out from the expense side of things. And then just looking at your savings. So savings to your expense, I was surprised at the number of years that I had without making a dollar that I'd be able to just operate and live. And so that gave me a lot of confidence to say, hey, look, you can try this for 3, 4, 5 years and be perfectly fine. And worst comes to worst, you come back into this industry. And so to me, having that worst case scenario laid out in my mind gave me a lot of confidence.
I think there are 3 giant things I'd love to pull out of there. You just quitting by design 1 through 10. You're like this and this and this so beautifully. The fears, the logistics, all of the above. So I'm gonna rewind back to just the basics, because some people think, okay, well, in fact, the coaching concept is fairly new. Mm-hmm. In the entrepreneur community, I think it's been around a little bit longer. But when I talk to people and I even say I do some coaching, they say a life coach, it's not, if I said I had a therapist or I was a therapist, it's, a lot more well known what that is. But I think people are kind of fuzzy on what a coach does, and the fact that there are different types of coaches for different types of things. There are relationship coaches, business coaches, life coaches, just kind of general overall. I have a coaching coach, and her name is Colette. Yeah. How did you decide what type of coach, and how did you go about finding one?
Yeah, and I initially had thought that I needed a business coach. And so the first conversation I had with my coach was, Alex, I know I want to quit. I have 4 months before I want to quit. You need to help me find my idea, and I need to make X, dollars per year. And this is what I'm paying you for. And he had a Wall Street background, but he described himself more as a personal coach. He kind of laughed. He said, the first thing that we need to do is just make sure that you as a person are comfortable in this change that you're making. And I said, okay, fine, but I want to make sure that we're hitting that goal. And he said, that goal will come, and it may not be in the way that you are thinking right now, but it will it will manifest itself as long as you are in a good place. And so he's been great in terms of just helping me manage the voice in my head and the fear that I think a lot of people go through. And so he's been a fantastic personal coach. I now also have a business coach. So since then, I've quit. I've successfully started an investment company and have acquired a business, which is a cash flowing business, and it's doing fantastic. And so now I have a different coach to help with the more technical components of growing that business itself. But initially, I think having that person to help you through each of the steps of evolution to get to that place where you have developed that confidence in yourself and you are successful, you're going to be successful no matter what you do. That's a instrumental ingredient. That was an instrumental ingredient to my success. And it was a concept that wasn't quite familiar to me because I just hadn't been around people in that environment. But if you think about any professional team or any type of organization, there is somebody watching and seeing the step-by-step from an objective perspective and giving feedback. So to manage your life and not have somebody else watching and helping and advising, just to me is like, why don't I have more? I need more coaches, in the most critical areas of your life, you need to have other people advising you and helping you. You ultimately need to make that decision for yourself as to what's best, but having others around you that you trust and that have been recommended, just makes a lot of sense.
I love that analogy. I used to always say that about therapy. I say, you have no problem going to the gym and getting a personal trainer for your body, but you have some big stigma around getting a personal trainer for your mind. That doesn't make any sense. The mind is what's driving the body. You should get that first. How did you find Alex, your first coach?
I found Alex through Tony Robbins. There was a Facebook group within post Tony Robbins, and one of the things that Tony always says is make sure that you have a coach to keep the momentum up. There was so much power that came out of that seminar that I went to, and it was fantastic. And I just wanted to keep that momentum, and so that always just stuck in my head, and so. Essentially posted to that group and ran interviews with a number of different guys. And the one that I resonated the most with had a financial background and understood what I was experiencing on Wall Street, but yet had a lot of deep spiritual understanding, an area that I was lacking at the time. And we just clicked. And so that's how I found him. Others have found people through recommendations, and there are a ton of great coaches, that are close to the AFES community. And so, there's a ton of them out there.
Yeah. I think your point is very valid. Facebook groups are a great place to start for many things because there's a support element there. I found my coach through a Facebook group, and it was just like it's the Wellness Force podcast community, but it's a bunch of people who are trying to better themselves. And so when I actually put a question up about coaching, this person stepped up, Colette, and she was like, I think we would jive. Let's talk. And and it comes out of nowhere. So if you're in some kind of transition, I think finding, like you said, yours is a Tony Robbins group, but there's probably Facebook groups out there for people wanting to leave Wall Street or people on the edge of divorce or whatever major life change. There's probably some support group out there in social media somewhere. Okay. Next thing you brought up was, another thing you brought up was the financial planning. And I love that. You just sat down and you went through your current finances and you realized where there was fat and you could cut the fat and live on a scaled down version of that for a lot longer than you thought you'd be able to.
Yeah. And I don't even think it's scaled down. I actually think that I live a more life at this point because I'm very, specific about what it is that I want to do. So for example, I took a 30-day trip around the world. I was in Italy for 10 days. I was in India. I was in Berlin and Budapest and Amsterdam and Moscow for the World Cup. That was, an expense that I factored into my thinking. The, $300 dinners on a Tuesday night have gone away because that's just not a good use of money for what I'm trying to achieve in my life at this point. So, and you'd be surprised at how much you can cut back. I was surprised at where I was actually spending my money. I had done my review, but in a detailed way, was able to get a lot of confidence from breaking it out and also making a plan for what the rest of my year looked like. I'm going to spend 30 days traveling. I'm going to take this vacation in South Africa. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, now what else am I going to spend on throughout the week, and how does my week to week and month to month look like? And so just having that number in your mind, and it can be a big number. There are, as I look forward, there are many things that I want to do, and I'm not afraid to say I want to spend to go do that. But just being in control of money, I think, and versus money controlling you, I think that's a power that I got. I am controlling how I spend and exactly what it is that I'm spending on and where I'm going. And I think, that also gave me a lot of confidence to take that next step.
Yeah. And the one other thing I pulled out was you were talking about essentially an identity quit and the fear associated with what happens if I'm not the successful Wall Street guy?
Yeah.
And I love how your coach brought up, or through whatever method you came to this, that you have to be okay with being a successful person and defining your success as I'm a good whole, conscious person, and not about the identity and the things surrounding you.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that was, if there was one recommendation I could give about my process, it was putting all the time actually into me to develop myself and to develop this confidence in what it was that I was going to, in myself as a human being. And, that's not taking in information from, your buddies that you're working with, or the buddies that have been in your life to that point, but it's actually deeply looking inside and becoming connected to your spirit and your person. And that takes a lot for myself. It took a long time to get to that level of comfort, and I'm continuing to work on it. It's not you get there and you're done. It's a continual evolution. But before you start to say, okay, I need to leave and I'm going to do this, and this is the job I'm going to have, you need to get that strength inside to then make that next step more powerful. Otherwise, I think you take risk on whether or not you may or may not be successful in that next endeavor. Because when you have that confidence in yourself, you're going to be successful in whatever it is that you do.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Okay. You said that the quit that you ended up taking was about a 12-month process, right?
Yes.
How did that actually look? How did you plan your timeline? What steps did you take along the way?
So let me give you the specifics. So it was January of 2017, and I said, I need to find something else. This is not working. From that point on, I just started, just voraciously reading on my own. And I went and I decided to go to A-Fest, which was something that came up in Code of the Extraordinary Mind. That was in April of 2017. And that's where I met all these wonderful people. And that was my social proof. I said, oh my God, this actually works. There are all of these wonderful people from all over the world that are successful, powerful people that are entrepreneurs. How are they doing it? I'm not sure, but they are. And so that gave me that extra energy to continue to pursue that path. And throughout the summer, I continued to do the same thing. I did Lifebook. I did the Tony Robbins. I went to Burning Man, and just continued to grow myself. When I came back in fall of that year, I said, okay, now I need to get into the specifics of what it is that I'm going to do to exact my leaving plan. And I had set the date to be at the end of that calendar year or thereabouts. So that gave me about 3 months to figure out exactly what I was going to do for that next step, 3 to 4 months. And in a different way, I became, just intensely involved in finding information. And that became around, how can I combine my skill set, which was investment banking and numbers and financial analysis, with also, what it is that I want to do as an entrepreneur. And I came across this information around essentially starting using private equity methods to do leverage buyouts for smaller scale businesses that were already cash flowing. So I said, oh my God, like, I've advised all of these private equity firms to do 100 million or $1 billion transactions. Can I apply that to the kind of micro scale of where I'm doing, $1 to $5 million transactions with leveraged resources and growing these businesses very quickly using digital marketing? So when the light bulb went off, I was like, it all of a sudden became, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do. And now I need to continue to learn the same way that I've learned in the past, which is put mentors in place and experts in place around me to support me through this process. So that's exactly what it did. Light bulb went off. It was the perfect fit. And for me at that time, and I said, okay, now I need to get the best information that's publicly available out there and have these people around me. And so I sought out experts in this area and asked for their advice. Some of it was paid. Some of it, I was able to just obtain it, just based on goodwill. But that was my strategy. And so I discovered that idea. It was a little bit later. It was early December. And I was like, okay, time's ticking. Like, is this going to happen? But it did find its way over. The idea did happen. It found its way to me. And I executed on the plan. And so that was a whole process throughout December and into January of making that announcement internally to my organization, and that became external. Retta, you're leaving. Oh my God, what are you doing? And getting the support of my community through this change in my career, and everybody on my Facebook community, the AFES community, my Cornell community. Everybody has been. My wife has been super. My family have been super supportive through this transition. And I think that's an important part for everybody. It is enlisting a support network around you of people that are cheering for you in all of the steps, the ups, the downs, but just having that network of people around you that will lead to success, because there will be downs. There's no question about it. So knowing that you have a network of people that you can rely on to talk to help you is critical. And so then on January 31st, I had, kind of let people know December 15th that it was going to happen. So I had that time in January to start to find the perfect business for myself to acquire. But January 31st was my last day as an investment banker.
Oh, congratulations. I just love this story.
Thank you. It's kind of crazy for me to just even share and think about. But yeah, 11 years as a Wall Street banker is a long time. I've spent a lot of time in offices and doing work to get to that point. But to then now to move on to this next chapter in my life is incredible. So I feel very grateful and thankful for the journey that I'm undergoing.
Absolutely. To sum up your timeline, which I just love, you make the decision, okay, this is not working for me, which I'm guessing probably had like a small amount of relief mixed in with that fear. Like, yeah, I'm not going to be stuck doing this forever.
It did. You know what? It was I was hanging on for so many years because that was what I was supposed to do. And when I realized that, no, you can let it go, it was a huge relief. It was a huge relief, but then quickly came in the fear of, okay, what are you going to do next? Right. So it was this mixed feeling, but there was such a relief when I said, oh my God, I'm going to find something else and it's okay. I got the okay from myself to say you can go. Yeah.
I love that. So you make the quit in your mind, and then you do your investigation phase, your exploration, you're building a network essentially through AFEST and all the people you're meeting through Tony Robbins. Then you get into the actual logistics of it, and then you build that new support network who's going to, bolster you into the next phase. And you tell everybody, and you do it in a way that gave them a month and a half. It wasn't like, okay, tomorrow we're leaving, so they had time to prepare, and then you did it. It's just so beautifully orchestrated.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. And then one last piece I'd love to pull out of it, because I adore her very much. Your wife, Deseret.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said she was, part of your support network. And that's something that I have an entire chapter in my upcoming book about preparing your relationships for a quit, And how, if you don't, it's obviously a very different situation than, you know, if you walk home one day and said, I'm quitting tomorrow, and she wasn't on board, that was going to look very different from how it ended up.
Yeah.
Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Sure. I think she understood exactly what was the job was taking from me, and how, you know, how much I had to commit to that, and not only on a day-to-day basis, but as we look forward to our future. And so she understood that we needed a different path. When it came time for me to say, okay, we're at the end of the road, you know, I think she was actually more afraid than I was, because I had been doing all this work for months and months, and I had the coach, and we were working through what the transition would look like. For her, she said, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. But, you know, I had then been equipped to be able to, you know, just walk her through each of the things that I talked about. What will other people think? What does the money look like? What will happen, you know, if I fail? Like, what does that even mean if I fail? Like, and so she quickly got on board, super supportive, you know, has been my biggest cheerleader and supporter throughout the process. And, you know, I really couldn't have done it without her. And, you know, the success that I'm experiencing today is, you know, it's her and I, we're a team. And so I'm so appreciative for her love and support throughout this.
That was beautiful. And I'm just going to end on that very lovely note. Oh, Retta, this has been a total delight, as I knew it would be, because you and Des are both super delightful people. And I'm so happy that you shared this story and your journey. And people are going to get a whole lot of great information out of it. I just can't thank you enough.
Of course, it's so good to connect with you, and I'm so glad to share my story. I hope people enjoy this and get something out of it. I'd be happy to follow up and help with, you know, any questions that people have, if they have any.
I appreciate that. I will, you know, if you have anything you'd like to share, or we can post a link in the show notes to your business, or we can find people, we can give people a way to connect with you. But in the meantime, for everybody else out there, happy quitting.
Happy quitting. Thanks, Lynn Marie.
Thank you, Retta. That was super fun.